Welcome back to Aaron's 1972 Datsun 510. Today we're going to pull the transmission out and we're going to take it apart. Hopefully we'll find the bad bearing inside it and then we'll go from there. Future Aaron here. There is nothing wrong with this transmission. I did not have to take it apart. It solved nothing. The things I need to do in order to remove the transmission include remove the gear shift lever, remove the speedometer cable, remove the drive shaft, unbolt it from the engine, and then remove the transmission mount from the transmission tunnel. Those are sort of the 5 big things I need to do. Then I'm going to have to slide it off and then slide it out from underneath the car. I've already drained the oil. The metal shavings inside of the transmission that were on the magnet were all very fine and very small. I don't know, we'll see. I am taking the transmission apart before I get replacement parts in for it. Understand that if this is something like your daily driver, you need to make sure to have the rebuild kit on hand. I'm trying to open it up to see what I'm working with here and then go from there. But it was nice. I got to drive it to work 3 days, but it was making the noise the entire time. And in fact, it was making the noise the first time I drove it whenever I was in Denver. When I'm working on a project that is likely going to get me dirty, I go ahead and try to do the things that are clean first, so that way I don't drag nasty crap into the car. So this is already a pretty simple setup because it's already been sort of messed up in the past. There's a C-clip here that I will pull out, then I'll remove that and be able to remove the gear shift lever. There's 2 ways to do this. One of them is using a dental pick and just sort of pulling that and then dropping it probably right into a vat of oil, which is sort of frustrating. I just thought about that. But I will grab that C-clip here in a little while. So now we can go ahead and remove the pivot here. Put both the pivot and that here, just because it's sort of dirty down there. Okay, now that's done, go ahead and put that there, and we'll go ahead and go like this to keep just crap from falling in the top of that. Now that's done, we'll go ahead and jack up the car and move underneath. Before I do that though, I'll go ahead and probably break the bolts loose on top of the transmission. Moving on. Okay, so this is the less than 500-mile oil that came off of or out of this car. I'll be honest, there's nothing really in the bottom of this. The oil is way dirtier than I think it should be for an engine or a transmission that's supposedly brand new or rebuilt, newly rebuilt. It's not brand new. But that wasn't that bad. I also have to disconnect the battery because we are also having to disconnect the starter, and so I don't want any sparks in the okay. That's done. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect both. The bolts that hold the transmission on are 14 millimeter. So I'm just going to try to break this loose real quick. Ouch. That hurt my hand, but that one's loose. I feel like I've done this about 40 times on this car, but what we're going to do next is we're going to jack the front end up and put it up on some jack stands. I'm going to need it pretty tall this time around because I do have to slide the transmission out from underneath the car. All right, hopefully that'll be enough. I also had to raise the back of the car. I forgot to video it. The older I get, the more scared getting under a car that's up on jack stands makes me. So the bolts that hold on the drive shaft are 12 millimeter, and if the tires spin, then the drive shaft spins. So, and because it's an open transmission, you can't just lock one of the wheels. So instead, I'm using the, what's it called? So instead I'm using the parking brake to lock up the back wheels so I can break these loose. We'll go ahead and go under the car and you can check it out. First one here. So we tighten and we tighten it, we loosen. So still not quite. I still haven't quite tightened up. Alright, let's see if that got it. Hey guys, if you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It would be greatly appreciated. Okay, now we'll go ahead and disengage the parking brake, and now we'll be able to spin this around. You can see the wheels moving, maybe you can't. Now we've got it back like this. Go ahead and lock it again. Parking brake engaged. That feels like that's a 13. Get that out of here. Almost rounded off the bolts because I wasn't paying attention. I don't actually know how to. Can we? Well, sometimes you have to be smarter, so you don't have to work as hard, because I was just being dumb. So I realized that all I needed to do was loosen my parking brake, and then it would give me enough space to sort of like this, which allows me to slide this out like so, and then make a mess, and then bring on. Come on. There we go. And boom, drive shaft out. Only small mess made. A good reason not to put washers and nuts and bolts back together, because if you don't, it's harder to find later. If you do this now, they stay together. They'll all get lost as a unit. That's good. You want everything to be lost together, not only one thing to be lost by itself, because that lone nut or washer or bolt gets really scared. And when it gets really scared, it hides in the weirdest places, and you'll never be able to find it. So make for sure to put all these things in a spot where you can remember where you're putting them. I've got a tray, a parts tray over, I'll hang it on the wall, and I'm going to go ahead and put these there. Now that I've got the drive shaft out, I'll go ahead and disconnect the speedometer cable off of the passenger side. Okay, hopefully you can see this. There's leaking there, so I'm going to go ahead and cover that real quick. This looks to be like a 16 or 17 millimeter, so we'll go ahead and loosen that and pull it off. Looks like a 17 millimeter would do it, but it's not liking it. Okay. Like I said, that one's about a 17 millimeter, but we're gonna see what happens. I've got okay, now that I've got that off or loose, I can just go like this. And once that frees up, you just sort of pull this little keyed cable out of the little gear. This is a close ratio 5-speed. You can tell by the fact that this is in the 6 o'clock position, this bottom bolt versus up top, which would be in the 12 o'clock position, would be a wide ratio. It also only has one ear here versus two, which is another way to tell the two apart. Also, the rear dust shield is much larger on the wide ratio. So a wide ratio has a wide rear dust shield. Maybe an easy way to remember that. We'll go ahead and take these off if we can. Yeah, how do we do that? I think those are 17s. Those ones are probably better to use an impact driver on. Let's see what happens here. I believe the top is spinning as well underneath the car. Okay, and this one's a 14. We'll need to take that off as well. So let's go ahead and grab the. First, I'll just go ahead and drop this. Maybe I won't. Man, that's crazy. Okay, alright, well. Try this again with a little bit of manual labor. Alright. Hoping that I might be able to just quickly zip these off. Okay, there's one. There's two. We'll go over to the passenger's or driver's side and see if we can grab those real quick. I think we get to them. And now the slow turn. So you can see what I'm doing here. I just took this bolt out, and I'm taking this one out. It's going to have the effect of having the back of the transmission dip, as you can see. That's fine. It's still on the engine mounts. This exhaust looks just terrible. Like someone who didn't know what they were doing made an exhaust, which is exactly what it was. It was someone, me, who didn't know what they were doing. Okay, can I? Okay, a couple things here. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Like so. Now we got that done. Get this out of the way, like so. Okay, all right, not bad. Guess we're making great progress. I probably just jinxed it, but oh well. If I remember correctly, the rest of the bolts pretty much are 14 millimeter. So let's go ahead and break the clutch slave cylinder off of the side of the transmission, so that way that's out of the way. I'm going to keep it as a unit so I don't have to bleed it again. So I will break the bolts off that hold on the piece rather than, you know, taking just the hydraulic line off of it and letting it empty out that way. Okay, so you can see right here and right here are the bolts that hold on the clutch slave cylinder, so we'll go ahead and break those loose. Looks like they are 14 millimeters, and I can probably zip those off with an impact. Okay, clearly on there somewhat well. I can break them loose real quick. Oh gosh, I don't know why I decided to put them on that tight. There, I guess I didn't really want them coming off. Oh man, that was insane. It was not the... I really didn't want those coming off, I guess. Okay. Again, if at all possible, try to keep your bolts in the parts. Now, luckily for me, I already realized that my reverse light wasn't working, so I pulled that wiring the other day because the reverse lights were just staying on, so that was simple. It's already done for me. I realized that this cable is causing issues here, so I'm actually going to, pop this little thing off, move it out of the way on the other side of the transmission, so that way I don't have any issues with it dropping down and hurting this. So this is just a shim that holds it in place, so you gotta pop that loose. Puts that a little bit out of the way. Getting back to removing the transmission here, we've got a bolt here. It's another 14 millimeter. Okay, that's done. We've got the two that are holding the starter on, so we'll get those. And then finish removing the top bolts. So this one's a little bit more difficult because it's supporting the weight of the starter, and so I'm trying not to have the starter break everything. And because I have all of the wires or the battery disconnected, I'm not having to worry about other issues here, such as wires that are still attached to the starter arcing anywhere. So that's done. Now I just gotta figure out where these last several bolts are and make for sure that I'm not missing any before I try to separate this thing. The rest of the bolts look like they can be got from on top. So go ahead and move. Got one down here. I think I've already popped loose. Once these things get loose enough where you can just use your fingers to unscrew them, it makes your life a lot easier. Some of them are shorter than other ones, so it's good to make yourself little mental notes. That one seemed like a longer one than the ones that were on the bottom. So there's one over on this side pretty easy to get to. So I'm actually going to leave it till the end since it's much easier to get to than this side. This one is right here, and there's just a heater hose right there too. I think I might be able to get a ratcheting. Okay, so I wasn't actually able to find my ratcheting end wrench, so let's see if I can get my sock. I can't get my sock in. Nope. Back to the end wrench. Sometimes you just have to be happy with making a little bit of progress. So let's see if I can get to that, even though I can't. Okay, so this little bolt here, I'm just turning as I go. It is not just finger tight yet, so we keep on going. Now it looks like it's finger tight. Again, yeah. All right. Okay, that one's done. So what I'm looking for now, I can see that the transmission is separating itself as I'm rotating. So what I probably need to do before I move it anymore is support the back end of the transmission so that way it doesn't, break off the input shaft. Okay, now I've got that supported. Notice that this is actually now free. Just pop off. Okay, So if I've done my stuff right, that is all the bolts. Now I just need, super simply, just remove the transmission, which should just be down and back. Alright, so the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to get back under the car, and I'm going to sort of slide the transmission, try to slide the transmission back on the jack, and got a puller on it. Let's see if I can get it loose, so let's see if I can get that done. That's out of the way. So what I'm doing now is I've got it broken loose from the engine. I'm hoping that more of the weight is actually back. I'm just wiggling until it's off of the engine. And then I'm going to use the jack to pull away. Now, it looks like I need the back end to go down some, since now that the shifter fork is out of the transmission tunnel hole there, I'll keep moving this back until I'm off of the input splines on the engine. Might be a problem. Okay. Alright, well, less than 2 hours and the transmission is out of the car. I now need to break both the front and the back loose. There's someone who's clearly siliconed all around this. So we will break this open, figure out what we're working with. But to do that, I'm going to actually switch to the factory service manual just to ensure that I'm doing this the right way. So this is where it's going to sit for at least the next maybe couple of hours as I figure out how to pull it the rest of the way apart.